April 1988. Donald Trump sits on Oprah's couch and says that ultimately Ivana does exactly as he tells her. She laughs. The audience laughs. That same spring, he hands her the Plaza Hotel and announces her salary at a press conference. $1 a year, plus all the dresses she can buy. She has already signed 4 prenuptial agreements. Within 18 months, she will be locked out of her own office in that hotel. Then she will call a gossip columnist to the Plaza and bury her husband on 11 consecutive front pages. To understand how she pulled that off, we have to start almost 2 decades earlier in Prague. Origins. She was born Ivana Marie Zelničková in February 1949 in a Czechoslovak factory town the communist government had just renamed Gottwaldov, Zlín today. Her father, Miloš, was an electrical engineer. Her mother worked as a telephone operator. He put her on skis at 4 and pushed hard. The payoff was never medals. It was a place on the junior national team, which meant travel documents. And travel documents meant something almost no one else in her town had. A legal way to cross the border and come back. She earned a master's degree in physical education at Charles University in Prague, appeared briefly on Czechoslovak television, and found herself talented, multilingual, athletic, and trapped. For decades, profiles and obituaries repeated a detail she gave to American journalists in 1988, that she had been an alternate on the Czechoslovak Olympic ski team in 1972. It wasn't true. Czechoslovakia sent no female alpine skiers to those games, and in 1989 the Secretary General of the country's Olympic Committee said flatly that no record of her existed. Snopes confirmed it again in 2021. The lie matters less than what it reveals. She was constructing a version of herself years before she ever met a man named Trump. The exit visa. In November 1971, at 22, she married an Austrian ski instructor named Alfred Winkelmeyer. By every account, including her own, a friend, and a marriage in name only. It produced an Austrian passport in March 1972, not a defection, which would have barred her from ever returning, but a document that let her leave and still visit her parents. In 1973, she obtained an absentee divorce in Los Angeles. Before the age of 25, Ivana had learned that a marriage certificate is a legal instrument, one that can be entered into for reasons that have nothing to do with feeling, where the only clause that matters is the one that lets you out. There was real loss beneath the strategy. She had been involved with Jiří Steidl, a Prague lyricist killed in a car accident in 1973. Afterward, she moved to Montreal, where she lived with a Czech émigré named George Siravatka, and told people they were married. They never were. She taught skiing, modeled, and did promotional work around the 1976 Olympics, the trip that would carry her to New York. The acquisition. In 1976, a group of models traveled to Manhattan to promote the Montreal Games. At a crowded restaurant, a tall 30-year-old developer from Queens offered to get the group seated, paid the bill, and drove them back to their hotel. Ivana would tell this story for the next 40 years. What it leaves out is that she had already spent 6 years engineering her way across borders, and was very good at it. Each saw an asset in the other. He saw a European woman with a graduate degree, several languages, a face that photographed well, and a genuine capacity for work. She saw a man with access to Manhattan, family money, and, after Prague, Montreal, and 2 marriages that were really exit strategies, a permanent place to stand. Neither was being sentimental. Both were making an acquisition. In March 1977, after roughly 6 months together, they negotiated a prenuptial agreement. It was drafted by Roy Cohn, Joseph McCarthy's former chief counsel, and by then Trump's lawyer, fixer, and mentor. Cohn's professional advice on marriage was blunt: plan for the day it ends. The agreement reportedly required Ivana to return any jewelry given to her if the marriage dissolved. Not a division of assets, but a return of inventory. She objected. Trump, according to later reporting, blamed his lawyer for the terms. She signed anyway and negotiated 3 more versions over the following decade. In 1979, 1984, and 1987. Each time raising the settlement figure, and each time confirming the same underlying principle. Whatever she built inside the company, her claim to it was worth exactly what the most recent signature said it was. They married on April 9, 1977, at Marble Collegiate Church, officiated by Norman Vincent Peale, the Trump family's minister and author of The Power of Positive Thinking, a theology built on the idea that projecting success confidently enough eventually makes it real. It is difficult to imagine a more fitting ceremony. Ivana signed the prenup before she said her vows. That was the hierarchy of the next 13 years, visible on day 1. The work. The marriage produced 3 children. Donald Jr. in 1977, Ivanka in 1981, Eric in 1984. And it also produced a career. Ivana was not decorative. She became vice president of interior design for the Trump Organization, responsible for the pink marble atrium at Trump Tower. In the mid-1980s, she was sent to Atlantic City to run Trump Castle, a casino operation with roughly 4,000 employees, as its president. Then, in 1988, she took over the newly purchased Plaza Hotel, overseeing a restoration reportedly worth tens of millions of dollars, down to the uniformity of every lemon wedge cut in the kitchen. At the same press conference announcing her as the Plaza's president, Trump told reporters he'd pay his wife $1 a year, plus all the dresses she could buy. It ran everywhere, treated as an affectionate joke. According to Vanity Fair's contemporaneous reporting, Ivana called friends afterward in tears. The truth was closer to a demotion dressed as a promotion. The Plaza sat in Manhattan, roughly 100 miles from Atlantic City, where by then Trump had begun seeing Marla Maples. The informant. There is a second story running underneath all of this, one that surfaced only after the fall of communism. Declassified Czechoslovak secret police files reported by The Guardian and the Czech magazine Respect show that Ivana's father, Miloš, cooperated with the STB, the State Security Service, for years feeding reports about his daughter's life in America and her husband's ambitions. Historians studying the files, including Tomáš Vilímek, describe him not as an agent, but as a pressured informant, a provincial engineer whose visits to his grandchildren depended on staying useful to the state that controlled his passport. One report, dated October 1988, recorded something striking, that Trump had considered running for president that year but judged himself, at 42, too young, and intended to run in 1996 as an independent at 50. He was confident, the file noted, that he would succeed. The source, ultimately, was Ivana, talking to her father during a visit home. There is no evidence she knew what became of those conversations. Aspen. By the summer of 1989, Trump's relationship with Marla Maples was becoming difficult to contain within the same social circuit Ivana still had to navigate. Then came Aspen, at the end of December. The family was there for Christmas. Accounts differ on the precise sequence, but it is not disputed that Maples was present at the same resort, and that Ivana and Maples encountered each other publicly, on the mountain, in front of witnesses. What is not disputed either is the underlying fact. A wife and a mistress were placed in the same room, on a family holiday, by the husband. He wasn't merely caught. The situation was arranged. Ivana understood immediately that the terms of her position had changed. The affair itself wasn't news to her. She was 13 years into a marriage in that city. What mattered was that it was no longer private, and therefore no longer manageable on her own timeline. The tabloid war. She didn't file for divorce first. She made a phone call to Liz Smith, the country's most read gossip columnist, whom the Trumps knew socially. On February 11, 1990, the Daily News announced the marriage was over, framed exactly as Ivana needed it framed. The loyal wife and business partner, discarded for a younger woman. The story ran on the front page for 11 consecutive days. Trump's side retaliated through the New York Post. On February 16th, the paper ran a front page built around a quote attributed to Maples concerning Trump's performance in bed, a line Maples has always denied making. A Post editor later said the story was approved on the theory that this was the one story Trump would never sue over. By that point, according to contemporaneous reporting, Ivana had already been locked out of her office at the Plaza, the hotel she had spent a year and a half restoring. Her legal team then went after the prenuptial agreements themselves, arguing that her original 1977 lawyer had been too closely tied to Trump's own circle to count as independent representation, a defect, they argued, that undermined everything signed afterward. Trump, meanwhile, called the agreements airtight in the press. They weren't. In October 1990, in the middle of the legal battle, Ivana's father died suddenly of a heart attack. He was 63. Trump flew to Czechoslovakia for the funeral and stood beside her. It changed nothing about the settlement, but it happened. Both facts sit uneasily together, and the record doesn't allow us to resolve them into a single, tidier story. The settlement. The divorce was granted that December, on grounds of cruel and inhuman treatment, a legal finding Trump did not contest. The financial settlement followed in March 1991. Reported figures vary, but generally include roughly $10 to $14 million in cash, the family's Greenwich estate, an apartment, child support, and limited annual use of Mar-a-Lago. Buried inside that agreement were paragraphs 9 and 10, a confidentiality clause barring Ivana from publishing or discussing in any form, fictionalized or not, anything concerning her marriage or Trump's personal or business affairs without his approval. Break it, and the payments stopped. She challenged it almost immediately. A judge set the clause aside on First Amendment grounds in 1991. An appellate court reinstated it in 1992. New York's highest court declined to hear a further appeal. The woman who had just won the most public tabloid war in New York history walked out of the marriage legally barred from describing it. The reinvention. What followed is arguably the more instructive part of the story. Rather than keep fighting for the right to tell the true account, Ivana built a business out of the public one. She published 2 novels. Thinly fictionalized stories of European women who marry ruthless American tycoons. Represented by First Amendment lawyer Floyd Abrams, who noted for the record, "It's fiction." Trump sued anyway. The case went nowhere near a verdict. She sold clothing, jewelry, and fragrance on QVC and the Home Shopping Network. She wrote a syndicated advice column, Ask Ivana, in the tabloid Globe, from 1995 to 2010, 15 years of advising other women on marriages of their own, while contractually forbidden to discuss hers. She appeared in the First Wives Club in 1996, delivering the line she'd be remembered for. Don't get mad, get everything. It is effectively the moral of a story she was legally prohibited from telling, compressed into 6 words no court could touch. She married twice more. When her 3rd marriage to Italian businessman Riccardo Mazzucchelli ended, she sued him under the confidentiality clause of their prenuptial agreement, the formerly gagged party now enforcing an identical gag on someone else. Her 4th wedding, in 2008, was hosted by Donald Trump himself at Mar-a-Lago, with his sister officiating and Ivanka as maid of honor. 18 years after the divorce, the enterprise, the shared name, the family, the brand, was still functioning, even if the marriage was long dead. Later years. In 2015, as Trump entered presidential politics, a resurfaced 1993 biography quoting Ivana's sealed divorce deposition reignited a controversy. Her use of the word rape to describe a 1989 incident. At the time, in a statement provided through Trump's own lawyers, she had said she felt violated, but did not want the word interpreted in a literal or criminal sense. In 2015, she went further, calling the account without merit. Every one of those later statements came from a woman still bound by a confidentiality agreement requiring her ex-husband's approval to speak publicly about the marriage at all, a fact that doesn't resolve what happened in 1989, but explains why the historical record never fully has. When Trump won the presidency in 2016, he offered her the ambassadorship to the Czech Republic. She declined. In 2017, she published a memoir, not about the marriage, which she still couldn't discuss, but about the children, the one subject the settlement never restricted. Closing. Ivana Trump died on July 14, 2022, at 73, following a fall at her Manhattan home. She left an estate of roughly $34 million, divided among her 3 children, with bequests to a close friend and to the family's longtime nanny. She was buried at Trump National Golf Club in Bedminster, New Jersey, on a plot the Trump Family Trust had registered as a private cemetery back in 2014, on land she never owned, under a document she never signed. Return, for a moment, to that couch in 1988. He tells Oprah his wife does exactly as she's told. She laughs, because in that room, at that moment, it plays as a joke between 2 people who are winning. She spent the next 34 years disproving it in the only currency she had. She broke the story of her own divorce before he could. She turned the wronged first wife into a product line sold across 2 continents. She wrote novels around a gag order and later imposed an identical one on a husband of her own. She refused a diplomatic post from a sitting president. Every one of those moves was made inside a structure someone else had drafted. A passport marriage in Prague, 4 prenuptial agreements, a confidentiality clause upheld by a New York court, a cemetery filing she never saw. She got out of Czechoslovakia with a marriage certificate. She got out of the Trump marriage with a settlement that dictated what she was allowed to say about it. She never fully got out of the paperwork, and the last document with her name on it was filed by somebody else.